Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very special session of the Acting and Modeling Success Summit with Aaron Marcus. In this session, Aaron and his guest are going to talk about how to break into fashion modeling. Aaron, we're excited to get started, man.
Me too. First of all, I'm really happy. We've got Vanessa Helmer, who is an international model scout, and she's also the founder and owner of modelscouts.com. And so, first of all, welcome, Vanessa. So glad you could be here.
I am honored to be here with you, Aaron.
Thank you so much. Look, you've been doing this for a very long time. You've found many different fashion models from around the world. Maybe what we can do is kind of start off with, even though this might surprise you, but I'm really not the fashion type. I don't think I have all the requirements to break into the fashion industry right now. But for those people who actually could do that, would you just let us know what kinds of basic statistics do you need? What kind of looks do you have to even be considered for fashion work?
Well, there's different types of fashion work, and generally I look for when it's strictly editorial. That's what we call high fashion models, is editorial models. And for women, the ideal age would be, well, we could start as young as 13, getting them in development, and then up to about 21, 22 would be the maximum to get started. You can work much later than that, but ideally we would like you to be established before then. And your height should be minimum 5 foot. You can be 5'7" to work in certain markets, and then of course up to 5'11" for the girls. And then for the guys, 5'10" to 6'2" ideally, and then they can be a little bit older, up to about 25 or so when they're first starting. So,
Now,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, is it true that like in the Asian markets that you actually can be a little bit shorter, like the 5'7", 5'8"?
Absolutely.
But in places like I don't know, France, if you're doing Paris runways or the New York shows, typically are they going to be a little bit taller?
Right. Runway for sure is 5'9" to 5'11". You don't want to be too much taller. I mean, there are girls that are 6 feet, but once you put the heels on, and you might be modeling with a male companion, then you don't want to be taller than him if you can help it. So
And
ideally.
and like, what kind of looks are even desired, or does every agency have their own look? So let's say you've got all the statistics. You've got the right age, you've got the right height, but then what are some of the other factors that agencies are looking for?
Well, if you looked at a group of models that were all high fashion, every single one of them would be beautiful, but they would all be completely different. So it's very hard. As agents, we just know it when we see it. For me, it's really a mathematical equation. How far are their eyes set apart? How long are their limbs? That sort of thing. So every model can be different, and sometimes not particularly beautiful. Something different is what we look for. So it's hard to pinpoint or categorize exactly what we look for, but it is a uniqueness. They certainly have to be beautiful.
So it's almost like you know it when you see it, and it's hard to describe what that is. It's almost like having the it factor.
It's totally the it factor. And what's even interesting is that there are women, female models right now in the top agencies that are working exclusively in the men's division, and there are male models that are working in the women's division.
I don't understand how is that happening?
They're just this androgynous look that is really popular right now. That's the it thing right now, is the androgyny look. So if you
And
look sort of in between both, that's very interesting. Not too beautiful, not too masculine.
and so like when people are thinking about weights, is it really not so much of how much you weigh, but just more of the proportions that you have and your general body type?
Totally. We never go by weight. I've never, in nearly 30 years that I've been in this business, ever asked someone how much they weigh. Never. It's all about measurements. So, and your proportions, again, particularly when you work in the Asian market. If you're a new model and an Asian scout is interested in you, they measure everything, length from knee to ankle, elbow to wrist, it's very precise.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, outside of the Asian market, what kind of measurements are people expected to have?
Well, ideally it's 34, 24, 34 for the girls. For the guys, a 38 to 40 jacket, regular or tall, is ideal. That's where we start, but there's exceptions to every rule. There are high fashion girls that are plus size girls that are completely, different measurements. And then we would go by sizes, like size 14, size 16, that sort of thing. So we have our base that we start with, and then we work from there. So
Now, are some of the reasons for, needing to have such specific statistics because the designers create samples in sizes that they think will make the clothes look the best, and basically the model has to fit into the sample size?
exactly. That's exactly it, Aaron. The model has to fit into the clothes. The clothes are not going to be made specifically for the model because even if she's booked for a show or a shoot, something may happen and she's not available. So that's why they want to make a standard size. So if another model has to come and do the job, it will fit them.
Okay, so now that we have a really clear idea of, what kind of statistics are needed, the next step is how are you found? I mean, can somebody living in a very small town just send, a snapshot picture to you, to send it to, modelscouts.com or an agency?
Yes, that if you're in a small town, ideally you're going to have to send your photos out to the large agencies. Um, It's hard even if you send them out. You could have all the potential in the world, but because of the volume of photos that those agencies receive each day, you could be missed in the pack. That's why having a mother agent or a scout like us, independent scouts, we look at the photos more often, I would think, because the big agencies in New York, they've got enough girls to handle and guys. So when they're scouting, it's just good to get somebody who's really, really looking all the time because we work with so many different agencies. So for sure, I would say send them to us at mobscouts.com. Absolutely.
Well, I guess also if you're going through a scout, then the scout, basically it's almost like you're kind of like the middleman, and you could see somebody's picture and say, well, they're really not right for this particular agency, but this agency they would be absolutely perfect for, and the model might not even have a clue as to which agent that is. So you could go directly to that agency that you already have a personal connection with because you've already brought models to that agency, and you can say, look, hey, here's this picture. This person is perfect, for your particular agency.
That's exactly it, Aaron, because we see the industry as a whole, and agencies in New York or Paris, Milan, they're focused on their own market. So if you're not right for their market, it doesn't mean that you can't work somewhere else and then work your way into that. And I see a lot of new models get discouraged because they send their photos out by email or mail and they don't get a response. And I would say the majority of the models that we place with the top agencies have already tried that route, going directly, and didn't get signed. And then when they came to us, we were able to break it down and go, where should they be starting? Where should they be developing their book? And then, the rest is history. So.
Well, and I guess, the crazy thing is, I'm sure this happens all the time as well. Somebody could send their photo to an agency, and like you were saying, it might not get looked at. They're not really taking it seriously. But then if they get a phone call from you, who, once again, they trust you because you've had, a great track record with them, and you say, look, here's somebody you need to look at. And this is somebody they probably just tossed out, weeks or months ago, and now all of a sudden, because it's coming from, a scout, they're going to take it a lot more seriously.
Exactly. Yeah, because they know once our name is attached to it that it's, they should take a look at least. Doesn't mean that it's going to, they're going to get signed to a contract that day, but certainly we're going to get their attention.
Now, what kind of photos do you need someone to send to you? I mean, unlike a commercial model or let's say an actor doing a headshot, I mean, you really want something pretty basic, don't you?
Yes. For the you just snapshots are fine. As a new fashion model, we don't recommend that you go out and spend a lot of money building a portfolio. It can get extremely expensive, and probably the agency will never use those photos anyway. When you're first starting, snapshots are the best thing to send, and just a nice full length shot, a headshot, some profiles, that is sufficient. Agents know instantly if they're interested. I see models sending hundreds of photos, getting DVDs and discs and all sorts of things, and sending us hundreds of photos. Within the first three, I know if I want to go any further. So just, 5 photos is plenty. If we want to see more, we'll ask for them.
And should they be, at least for women, should they be in a bathing suit?
Yeah, bathing suit would be great. If you're comfortable, if they're young, of course, if they're 13, it's not necessary. If you're unsure about sending photos to, a stranger or a scout, swimsuit is great, two-piece, and for the guys, in jeans and no shirt would be great. But in the beginning, if you're uncomfortable with that, just something form-fitting that really and is natural. Not a lot of makeup, not a lot of frilly things, and even for the kids, no frilly, just natural. Jeans and
And
t-shirt. Great.
so that way they can see body type and they get a
Yeah,
better sense of who you are.
right. Exactly.
Okay, so let's take it to the next step. So somebody's living in a very small market. They send photos to you. You think, wow, this person has a lot of potential. Then you contact, um, an agent, and let's say the person says, yes, yeah, I think this person has a lot of potential. What exactly is the next step?
Well, that would depend on the market. Then, if they were going to Asia, that would be a completely different thing because there's visas and a lot of documentation that we need to take care of for them.
Now, is that
So
something, excuse me, is that something you would do, or is that something that the agency in Asia would take care of?
it starts there where they will do the application and get all the paperwork done, and then they usually FedEx it to the model. If they're living in a different city from where we are, it is to them, and then they would go to the Japanese consulate and get that. If it's Japan, approved, and it's a very, it happens all the time. It's not a difficult process. It's just that there is certain things that we have to follow in order for a model to be able to go over there, because by law, the agencies in Japan have to cover certain expenses. Airline tickets will be paid for, accommodation. It's a much more, I don't
Is
want
it
to say
regulated?
regulated, that's the word, than it is in
Uh-huh.
some of the other markets. So, and if it's New York, again, they would just go there, and sometimes the agencies will pay their way and sometimes they won't. But my advice to models, if a big agency is interested in you and they want you to pay the ticket to go there, pay the ticket to go there, because they are not going to ask you to come unless they're pretty certain you're going to work, and that will be the best investment that you ever make. And even if
So,
they pay it,
oh,
Aaron, you're going to have to pay them back anyway. The
okay,
agents don't pay for things. They advance.
okay, okay. So we'll start off with the Asian market. I still want to finish up a couple of things there, and then we'll move over to other markets. I guess the European market. So with all the visa work, the paperwork, the agency in Japan is taking care of all that, and they're paying for all that up front, correct?
Right, and they often give a guarantee. So even if the model doesn't work and make enough money to pay those initial expenses back, it's taken out of the guarantee. So uh, there used to be in the day, the guarantees were amazing back in the day. Now, not so much. It's just enough to cover the basic expenses. But at least when you leave there, you're not going to have to pay anything out of your own pocket. We love sending new models over to Asia.
And typically, how long would somebody initially go over there?
2 months. 2 months
Two
is the
months.
standard. Yeah.
And so the agency would, they have places for them to stay. They have people who might drive them around to the go-sees and
That's exactly it. They usually go in a bus all together to all the castings. And then when they get the job, they have to kind of figure out the area themselves and get themselves to the actual bookings. But for castings and things, they often are all taken together. And it'll be models from all other agencies together, too. It's fantastic.
now let's say now how young what would be the youngest age somebody could go over to Japan?
Well, I have sent models that were 14, but
14. And
But
And
you know
I'm
what,
assuming.
Aaron? The people in Asia are so good, and it's so safe, and it's just a fantastic market that I've never, had a problem. Knock on wood.
Now, is there an adult that typically would go with a 14-year-old or a
A
15-year-old?
parent is always welcome. That's never an issue. If a parent wants to go with the child, or even if they're 18, if by the time they're 18 we kind of expect them to be able to do it on their own, but if a parent, and usually they go for the first 2 weeks, that is fine. We welcome it. It's not a problem. Never an
Now, the
issue.
parent, but the parent will pay for their own airfare
Exactly. Yeah. They'll cover their own
and
expenses.
all their expenses. Okay,
Mhm.
so moving over to, working in Europe, how is that different than working, besides the, maybe some of the statistics, but are there any differences if you found somebody that you thought would be perfect for, Milan or in Germany or in the UK? Is there any different process for that?
Not really. It's different from Asia, but I normally don't send models over to Europe unless they've been to Asia first or worked in another market.
Why is that?
Well, you go to Europe to get tear sheets. You don't go to Europe to make an
Excuse me,
income.
would you just explain what tear sheets are?
Tear sheet is it's just like tearing a picture out of a magazine. We call
It's a
them tear
copy of
sheets.
a copy of the ad, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And the way that it used to work is that you could never work in New York unless you had been in Europe first. To be a fashion model and to be a major fashion model, you always had to go to Europe first, build your book, and then present yourself to the New York agencies. Now we get girls and guys into New York right away when they're brand new and they've got no book. It's not like it used to be. However, having said that, I like them to learn the industry in a really safe environment where they're making some money and it's not as much of a financial burden on them first. So that is why I like the Asian market. And then possibly the European market to get some really nice European tear sheets, but we never send them there thinking that they're actually going to make a whole lot of money there. The money
It's
markets would be New York, Asia, and then once they're established, then they can go back, to Europe, and because they're already known, and they would be booking all the time. So, but plus, Aaron, I get a lot of models from Europe already, so they're already there.
And then would you still send them to Asia even if they're living in Europe?
Yes, yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting. So
It,
basically, in some ways, you're trying to give them the experience, the exposure, so that they can come back and work in New York, which is where I'm assuming, or maybe I shouldn't assume, I should just ask, is that where fashion models can make the most money by working in New York?
Well, New York is the ultimate. It's, where American Vogue is, the big magazines. So it is the ultimate, but they work the whole circuit. It depends on the seasons. So they might go to Asia for a couple months and they'll go to New York, or they might do the shows in Europe. So they're traveling all the time. That's the ideal situation once you start making it. You're never in one place for too long. I would say 2 months maximum at a time, unless you're really established and living permanently in one of those
So
markets.
so fashion models are nomads.
Yes, they're like rock stars.
And just to get like a general idea, and I realize it's going to vary so much, but for somebody who's in Fashion Week and doing the runway in New York, do you have any sense of what a fashion model could actually make? If they're a well-known model, if they're hired to work on during Fashion Week?
Well, if they're a well-known superstar, they can come away with hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean,
In
absolutely.
just
Yeah,
during Fashion Week alone.
yes. When you're hiring Naomi, Coco, all the top girls, you're paying top dollar for those ones. So, because they're celebrities now, it's a whole different market. But the new girls, it can be anywhere from getting clothing in exchange when you're first starting out, because who wouldn't want a whole outfit in Gucci or Marc Jacobs or something, and they might get that in the beginning, and then once they start to establish themselves and working more and become a more important girl for these designers, then the dollars start to go up. But these
That's
girls
incredible.
are making, it varies, but the first year or so can be slow going while you're building your book and getting a name for yourself, and then you get one or two major bookings, and then whew, you could be making millions.
Wow. Hey, listen, I know we're kind of running out of time here, and I do want to make sure that people get an opportunity to ask you some questions. So, Joel, are there some questions
Absolutely.
that people have written in?
Yeah, so we've got a few questions here. Sarah, Melbourne, Australia, writes in. She says, how difficult would it be for someone living in Australia to get representation and work in the United States?
Well, again, it would depend on your book, the strength of your book. We've placed lots of models from Australia in New York and every other market. We love models from Australia. So it's not that difficult. Now with the internet and how we work online with everybody, it is not a problem where you live. It just the internet has just taken all those boundaries right down. So it's not difficult. Location's not an issue. It's the strength of your book and whether or not you're right for New York. If you're right for New York, doesn't matter where you come from.
Okay, great. Jean from Montreal, Canada asks, and this might have been touched on a little bit, but I do want to ask her a question. Why do fashion models need to travel overseas when there seems to be plenty of work both in Montreal and New York?
Well, because you make money usually over in Asia. You don't have to go there. But that's one of the major money markets. And so you want to make money. It is a profession. It's a job. So Montreal's a great market, beautiful magazines, lovely tear sheets. And New York is the same way, but again, it can be difficult to break into. A lot of girls will go to Asia, make a lot of money, and then come back and then go to New York and try to get the work there and build more tear sheets and things, but they're making more money over in Asia.
Okay, great. Jenny from Washington, D.C. asks.
I hope that answers.
I hope it does too. I'm moving fast because I want to try to get as many people in as possible. Jenny from Washington, D.C. asks, how young can a model start? What's the minimum age?
You were saying before, like 14 is like when you would start somebody in development?
Ideally, I think that a nice age is 16, 17, 18 is okay. Yeah, again, as young as 13, but it would depend on the model. I have a little girl right now, Erin, that we just placed in Singapore, and we got her an agency in Sweden because she's from Russia, and she's 6, and she's doing editorial work. She's a child model. She's 6, yeah. Yeah,
I didn't know there was such a thing as a child fashion model.
She is doing editorial. She's on option for a Harper's Bazaar cover. So yeah,
I'm just floored.
So there are no, it just every situation is different. There are no age. It's not too young because then they'll be in the child category. So it's a different type of work. But for the fashion, for the big agencies, you can be 12. Who's the girl that I can't remember her name right now, but she's a very famous supermodel, started at 12. But we don't want them, there is some outcry about that in the industry right now. So it's okay to develop, but we're not going to throw them right in the deep end at that age. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Hey, just on a little bit of a side note, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I was just wondering, so let's say there's a 16-year-old, who's maybe in high school in the States and goes over to Japan for a couple of months. What do they do about education? I mean, how do they miss classes and things like that?
Well, again, it would depend on the situation, but a lot of them go over in the summer and in spring break. That's fine, but they make special arrangements with their schools, and you got to have good grades, and that's why it's important. You just can't do the modeling. You have to have some smarts too. You want to do well in school, and because it's a profession, and we expect you to be committed and have good grades in school as well.
That's good, thank you.
Joel, do we have time for one more?
I think we can get one more in here. Wendy from Tampa Bay in Florida asks, she writes, this might seem like a weird question, but I am not interested in promoting fur products. Can I tell my agent that I won't work with furs and still be a successful model?
Oh, I love her. I love her. What's her name?
This is Wendy from Tampa Bay. Writes this.
Wendy, you're awesome. Yeah, we support your decision. Totally. We will never put pictures of models wearing fur on our website. There may be people, our members, that upload them themselves, but we will not do it. If a model doesn't want to wear fur, we completely support that. I myself am a member of many animal organizations and completely 100% support that decision. So
Hey, Vanessa, but
you don't
just
have to.
in general, I mean, whether it's furs or, anything else, what is the policy if a model says to the agent, hey, look, this really isn't something that I'm comfortable with. I really don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to promote it. Is that something that's accepted by the agent?
It should be. There are lots of girls that still do the fur products. I wish we were in a situation where it never came up and it just wasn't even an issue. But if a model feels that way and she's one of our models, we will support her 100%. If she's pressured, she just has to stand up for what she believes in. And the more and more models that do that, then, I'm hoping that one day it won't ever be an issue. But for
Great.
now, yeah. So it's like, she's not going to, I can say that, Coco Rocha has certain restrictions of what she will do and what she won't do. So she will never be nude, semi-nude, that sort of thing. And her career has not suffered for that.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Vanessa, I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending the time here and really shedding light on the fashion industry. I was just going to say, and I know we're kind of running out of time here. If people do have any further questions, I'm going to stick around at the end of the day and answer any other questions that people have. Joel, I think you were going to put something up.
Yeah, we'll have some instruction in between sessions and things like that for people that want to ask questions, how to do that. And then we can get to those at the end of the day, Aaron. You can stick around, and we'll have that available for people. So, hey, Vanessa, thanks so much for
Fantastic.
being with us. This is
I
fantastic.
am, yeah, thanks. It went by fast.
Absolutely. We're going to take a
Thanks
couple.
so much, Vanessa.
We're going to take a couple minute break, and we'll see everybody right back here in a few minutes on the Acting and Modeling Success Summit with
Bye,
Aaron
everybody.
Marcus. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.